Jared and Jacob from Marble City Pharmacy join us this morning on Health Monday. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Hope
Good
everybody-
morning.
Well,
We might need to update those photos.
yeah, well,
No, those guys are younger.
you can't do something with some guys, y'all. So
Maybe we
can't-
should leave them.
Yeah. Let's talk about Parkinson's disease this morning. Something that many of us are familiar with, but Jared, talk about Parkinson's and exactly what is it?
Well, just to get started, I think this might be the best way to do it. Parkinson's is a disease where the nerve cells, are really called neurons in your brain, are damaged to the extent that they can't produce a substance called dopamine. Now, that may be too many long words that we have to define, but dopamine basically helps to control your movements, some of the muscle activity, and so when you don't have dopamine, you get a certain kind of stiffness. All kinds of movements that you do are inhibited, and a bunch of other symptoms we're going to talk about in just a minute. So if you want one thing to remember about Parkinson's, it's damage to your brain that decreases a substance called dopamine.
Jake, talk about some of the symptoms.
All right, so when we don't have active dopamine or enough active dopamine, we get the things that everybody can picture in their head with Parkinson's. The first thing everyone thinks of is that resting tremor. Everybody, of a certain age, dating yourself here, can see that picture of Muhammad Ali lighting the Olympic torch, doing this with both hands uncontrollably, trying to hold the torch still. That tremor, that is a Parkinson's tremor. A lot of times with that tremor, you'll see. You can see here the thumb and the forefinger, they call it a pill rolling motion. Like imagine you got a little ball or a little pill in between your fingers and you're just constantly rolling it. That's an involuntary movement that comes with Parkinson's. You get really slowed movements. Buttoning a shirt becomes very, very difficult because the fine motor skills and the slow movements of doing it become very difficult. And you get more rigid muscles, so you're not as flexible or moving as smoothly. And it also affects your balance. So when you have slow muscle movements, not moving as smoothly with rigid muscles, and your balance is off, you fall a lot. And that becomes a major issue. And then things here, your speech changes. It gets softer, quieter, more mumbled, harder to understand, and you have trouble swallowing. That's a big one that comes later, obviously, that causes huge end-of-life type issues. But trouble swallowing becomes a major deal. So those are the primary things that come with Parkinson's. I could go 50 more. I mean, because it starts to encompass literally everything. But those are the main ones people picture.
Jared, what about causes of Parkinson's?
Well, it's a great question. Let me just say this definitively in the beginning. There's no proven cause for Parkinson's. There are some things that have been linked to it that have been studied extensively. The first one would be genetics. We'll talk some more about genetics in just a second. But basically, if one or more of your family members have had Parkinson's, it makes it to where you have a much greater chance of getting it. Two other things that have been studying extensively, which is pretty interesting, are pesticides and well water of all things. And so I don't want to say that these things have definitely been linked to Parkinson's, but there is enough there to at least have some curiosity. So while the cause is unknown, genetics, pesticides, well water at least hold some kind of connection. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we don't necessarily need to go through because, again, just not proven.
Jack, who's more likely to be diagnosed with Parkinson's?
Well, Jimmy Dale, there's nothing you love more than when we come on here and paint a picture of you.
Yeah.
He's not that old, I don't think.
Well, what are you, like 36?
Something like that.
Something like that? Okay. The risk of Parkinson's increases with age. We know that. Like I said, there's a lot of things we don't know about Parkinson's. We know it increases with age. It's rarely before 50. It's before 50, you are very much labeled as early onset Parkinson's. Think Michael J. Fox. Everybody knows who that is. That's early onset. But it's always, just about always, after 50, the average being 70. That's about when it onsets, is 70 years of age. Again, he mentioned genetics is a risk factor. If you have a first-degree relative, parent or sibling with Parkinson's, you are more likely to develop Parkinson's than the average person on the street. And men more likely than women. It's just much more common in men than women. Again, when you don't know a cause, you can't figure out a why of risk factors either, and who knows? Because we all have the same type of neurons that produce the same type of dopamine, whether you're male or female. So, but for whatever reason, men get it significantly more than women.
Black, white?
That one doesn't seem to differentiate. And then the exposure to these toxins Jared was talking about, whether there's toxins in well water or toxins in pesticides or something that, again, we can't really nail a cause down, we're not sure, but those things are risk factors as well.
Yeah, with here we are in 2024, a lot of things have changed in the last 20 years as far as treatment's concerned. What about available treatments for Parkinson's?
Well, there are a lot of available treatments for Parkinson's. I'm trying to boil them down to, I guess, maybe the categories and the way that they work without boring you with all the details. So going back to what Parkinson's is, right, it's a decrease in the amount of dopamine that you have in the brain. And because that's the primary issue, the medications are really surrounding, for the most part, trying to increase dopamine. So there are medications that provide dopamine, right, for you so that you have an increased amount of it. But dopamine is a fragile fragile chemical. And because it's a fragile chemical, when you give it in drug form, there are other medications that mimic dopamine. So you can give dopamine or you can give drugs that mimic dopamine. There are also medications that prevent dopamine from breaking down in your brain. So there's 3 categories of drugs right there. And then you have some other medications that are really just designed to control the tremor itself, because that's one of the primary symptoms, and those medications are quite common. So those are the basic categories of drugs. There are a lot of them out there. There are some types of surgery that people have for Parkinson's. I'm not going to get into that because obviously we don't do that. We're not experts on that. Deep brain stimulation, if you've ever heard of that, but that's for kind of extreme cases.
Yeah. So is there anything, Jake, that we can do besides taking the medication?
There are a lot of things that we do and teach people and help people with. Or try to explain, and that is getting yourself and your home ready when you have Parkinson's. I don't want to have the falls, I don't want to have the injuries and all the things that come with it. So what do we do? Well, first thing, we talked about balance and everything, walking being thrown off. Let's look at some exercise. Let's strengthen the muscles that we can while we can. That helps with posture, that helps with balance, that helps with our walking. And then there's a mindset to our walking. We try not to move too quickly. We try not to rush. Things you don't have to think about when you don't have Parkinson's disease. We want to make sure to put our heel down first when you're walking, because if you go toe first, you shuffle more and you're more likely to trip forward. So things like that, and looking straight ahead when you walk, not looking down at your feet. Actually, you'd think if I look at my feet, I'm less likely to trip. Keep your eyes straight ahead. It keeps your focus and your body balance proper when you're walking. Those are big deals. Getting the home ready is a huge deal. Things you don't think about. Cords, rugs, all sorts of things a person who aren't getting their feet quite high enough off the ground are going to trip and fall over. You got to get those things out of the way. Certain chairs need to be moved out of the way, just certain types of furniture. Maybe it's a lift chair that can lift a little higher when you go to sit in it. So many things. Walking with a cane or a walker and making space in the house for that to come through. Not trying to turn too quickly. All of these things are factors. Lights, and I'll tell you another one that we did with my granddad that was huge when he was doing this 25 years ago or more now. And it was a doctor at, what's the place he went to in Bethesda? National Institutes of Health. Yeah. Had them go to the hardware store and get like electrical tape. Blue and red electrical tape. And every time there was a step up or step down in the house, put 1 stripe of each, because the contrast in colors at the edge of each step would help his brain focus in on that and get his foot up over that, or get his toe lifted up over that to put his heel down. It just helps the brain concentrate. Little things you don't think of that become so important when even the simplest of things become too difficult to do. And one of the things that happens, and this is common, because it's a breakdown here, not down here, right? Your brain will tell that foot, left foot, pick up and go. And you're sitting there watching, waiting for that left foot to pick up and go, because your brain's telling that left foot to pick up and go. And sometimes it's just not.
Yeah.
And so there are days where, and it gets better and worse on certain days. There's days where it just won't happen. So you've got to prep the house and prep your lifestyle as much as possible. And that sometimes is bringing in a physical or an occupational therapist into your team of doctors, as well, to just help take care of things and help get you ready, because there's a lot of life changes coming.
Wow. Guys, thank you for coming this morning. Appreciate it as always. For more information, contact our friends at Marble City Pharmacy. That's going to wrap it up for me. Our conversation on Parkinson's disease on Health Monday. Going to be a nice day.